Welcome, everyone. We are here today. Thank you for joining us to talk about unpacking the SBA and additional benefits from the new stimulus bill. I'm Kassar and thrilled to be joined with our special guest today, Lynn Ozer, who I'll introduce in a minute. Briefly about myself, I am the founder and CEO of Multifunding LLC. For the past 11 years, we've been working with business owners and entrepreneurs to help them figure out how to use leverage and debt to grow their business responsibly and achieve their highest growth goals. I write a regular column for Inc. I have advised the White House, Federal Reserve, and Treasury Department on business credit matters, and I have a book out on Amazon called The Growth Dilemma. Could not be more excited to have the SBA Queen join us today. I jokingly call Lynn the SBA Queen because that's who she is. She has been working in SBA for decades and first female chairwoman of the board of directors of the National Association of Government Guaranteed Lenders. She is a recipient of the SBA's Financial Services Advocate Award and recognized as NAGLE Instructor of the Year. More importantly, for the last decade, when I have a question about SBA lending that I'm not sure about, I call Lynn. And so we're lucky to have her today. Welcome, Lynn.
Thanks, Ami. I'm glad to be here.
Just want to be quickly clear about what today is about and is not about. If you're specifically here and interested in learning about the PPP or the EIDL or the grants, you're not in the right place. We have content out there in our communities on the web for you, but here we are specifically here to talk about the conventional SBA loans, which is not an entitlement. You have to apply and be qualified for it, but it's a program that can benefit your business incredibly. And there are specific benefits in the new stimulus bill for getting an SBA loan now that we want everybody to be aware of. Money talks. I know this chart might be a little bit confusing, but let me explain. On the left-hand side, this is if you get a 10-year SBA loan for working capital, partner buyouts, acquisitions, etc. Or what you can see if you get it on the left-hand side, a $350,000 SBA loan tied to the new stimulus, there are savings of over $31,000. On the bottom right, if you get a real estate or equipment loan, which is the 504 program for $5 million, there are savings of $84,000. So there are real significant savings. The government wants to stimulate economic activity and is using the SBA as a tool to do so. We're going to talk a lot more about this over the next hour. As a general rule, the SBA is a government agency designed to aid, counsel, assist, and protect the interests of small business concerns. Small business, as we'll talk about, doesn't just mean the little flower shop down the street. Small business can be some pretty big business as well. Perhaps the biggest myth about the SBA is that the SBA lends money. And yeah, well, the SBA rarely does lend money, but 99% of the time in normal course of business, the SBA is guaranteeing loans to encourage banks and some non-bank lenders to make riskier loans than they otherwise would. If a bank makes you an SBA loan today, if you default on it, the bank will not be on the hook for a big percentage of that loan, therefore encouraging them to take riskier loans than they otherwise would. The other myth is that the SBA is just for like that little flower shop down the street. And let's be clear, while the SBA can help a very small business, you can also get up to $5 million for partner buyouts, working capital, acquisitions, expansion capital. And if your project is real estate or equipment for owner-occupied real estate, you can go up to $12.8 million on a project. And perhaps the third biggest myth we run into about SBA loans is that someone feels they are not qualified for an SBA loan according to their bank. They walked into a bank and they were never told about it, or they were told it didn't fit for them or didn't work for them, and they just assume they're out. But that's not the case at all. There are over 2,200 banks and non-bank lenders across the country who work with the SBA, and each of them uses the program a little bit differently and interprets it a little bit differently. So be careful not to just take one no for an answer. Now I'm going to turn the floor over to Lynn Ozer to talk a little bit more about the SBA and can you benefit.
Okay, let's talk about SBA loan eligibility. What types of loans are eligible? The business must be based in the United States and operate as a for-profit entity. The owner should have the ability to invest their own equity. In other words, they need to provide a down payment on business startups and business acquisitions of another business. SBA has a mandatory down payment. Additionally, lenders want to see that the owner has invested equity of their own in the business that they're about to finance. You also must exhaust all other financial resources, personal and other business resources, before seeking SBA assistance. You do not necessarily need a turn down letter from another bank in order to get an SBA loan, but any institution that you go to has to be sure that they're unable to lend money to you on a conventional basis before utilizing the SBA's guarantee. The business also has to be small by SBA's definition, which is divided into two different types. There's traditional size standards and alternative size standards. The traditional size standards are based on the type of business, be it manufacturing or distribution, based on the number of employees, or if it's retail or a service-oriented business, it's based on the gross annual receipts over the last 3 years. The alternative size standard, which came into being during or under the Jobs Act during the recession, the alternative size standard is much broader based and allows for any business that has tangible net worth under 15 million and, not or, and net profit after taxes of less than 5 million averaged over 2 years. The business has to demonstrate its need for the loan that they're asking for and the utilization of sound business purpose for the proceeds of the loan.
Sorry, Lynn.
That's okay. The businesses that are basically ineligible are any business that is delinquent on any existing debt to the US government or has caused a loss to the US government. Any business where anyone who owns 20% or more, or any key employee or director, is presently incarcerated, on parole, probation, or a defendant in a current criminal proceeding is ineligible. If your business derives more than 1/3 of its gross annual revenues from legal gambling activities. We're talking about a convenience store, for example, that sells lottery tickets. If more than 1/3 of the gross annual revenues are from lottery ticket sales, the business is not eligible for SBA financing. Speculative businesses are not eligible. The one that comes to mind is the flipping of real estate, purchasing real estate for the purpose of flipping it for sale, that is not eligible. Any political or lobbying firm, not eligible. Life insurance companies are not eligible, although the agents that sell life insurance may be eligible. A lending institution is ineligible, and businesses that are based on a pyramid scheme like Amway and Mary Kay are ineligible for SBA financing. In addition, any business that is illegal or indecent, like a strip club, for example, or a private club where membership is restricted, or a business that has restrictive hiring practices, such as Hooters, who will only hire women as servers.
And just a comment from the chat, just so everyone knows that nonprofits are not eligible for SBA, traditional SBA 7A loans. There have been some exceptions to allow nonprofits to get the PPP and the EIDL now, but regular SBA loans are not, nonprofits are not eligible for.
A non-for-profit business is definitely not eligible for 7A or 504. Ami is correct. What are the primary business benefits of SBA lending? The number one benefit is that an SBA loan is put on longer terms than a conventional loan. By stretching out the maturity, the payments are lowered. The advantage is not in the interest rate, it's in the payment amount, which is the most critical part of determining your cash flow and your ability to support all the activities of your business. The second main benefit of SBA lending is the collateral requirements that are much less than they are in traditional banks. And SBA lenders are strictly cash flow lenders. Now, when I say that, that is what SBA requires, is that the bank certify that the repayment of the loan is based on the cash flow of the business being financed. Whether that cash flow is proven by existing cash throw off or projected cash throw off, that we can talk about later. But SBA is looking for the ability to repay, not the liquidation of the collateral or its value to repay the loan, as is in a conventional scenario.
I think I might just add to everyone there that, again, all lenders are a little bit different. So there are some lenders out there that will be heavy collateral lenders. In my opinion, that's not really what the program is about. So if you go to one lender, they tell you, look, the loan looks great, but you don't have enough collateral for us. That doesn't mean that there's not another lender out there that will do it.
Right. And what Ami is pointing out is that a benefit of working with a consulting company like Multifunding, who could help direct you to a lender that better fits your specific needs, because they are familiar with many different lenders across the country and which one would fit you and your scenario. Personal guarantees, that's a question we get all the time. Anyone who owns 20% or more of the applicant business is required to personally guarantee. And then the question is, well, then do we have to pledge our house? If you are looking for a loan under $350,000, you do not necessarily have to pledge your house. That will vary from bank to bank based on their own credit requirement, but it is not a requirement of the SBA. However, if you are getting a loan larger than $350,000, SBA has a full collateral requirement that the loan be fully secured to the extent possible, meaning if the business collateral is insufficient to cover the debt, they will look at the personal real estate of any 20% or more owner to get as close to full collateralization as possible. The loan will not be declined by the SBA for lack of collateral, but as Ami pointed out, certain lenders are not comfortable dealing with collateral less, if you will, loans. And that's why, again, benefit of working with a company like Multifunding, who searches out the requirements of the different lenders that they represent.
Sometimes some lenders will say to us, sometimes borrowers say to us, I don't have a house, so I can't get an SBA loan. That's not the case. If you have a house, you're getting a loan for more than $350,000, then in most cases, the SBA lender is going to likely have to take the lien. But if you don't have a house, that doesn't preclude you from getting the loan.
So what are the most common SBA loan programs? The 7A loan program is the flagship program of the SBA. It is the most common because it covers a broad range of loan proceeds. The 504 loan is also a popular loan, as Ami pointed out earlier, and that is utilized strictly for real estate and equipment loans. What are the common uses of a 7A loan? A 7A loan can be utilized to buy out a partner or to acquire an existing business. You can also use it for expansion of your existing business or for working capital or growth capital in a business that's already in existence. You can utilize the funds to refinance existing debt, or you can buy, refinance, or construct owner-occupied business real estate. For existing property, that means that the business has to occupy 51% of the building on day one, and to construct new facilities, the business has to occupy 60% on day one. You can also utilize a 7A loan to start up a business or to buy a franchise.
And what we're going to do, folks, is we're going to now go through sections on these things. So let's say, you might be interested in refinancing debt, but you're not looking to buy out a partner or acquiring a business. Hang in there because we're going to get to the section that's relevant for you.
Okay, let's start with buying out a business or a partner. Okay. Typically, there is a down payment required of 10 to 20%, 25% of the total project cost. That's just typical. We should point out that SBA's minimum requirement is 10% on a business acquisition. How can seller financing help you to do this? Now, if the seller agrees to finance a portion of the loan, it can accrue interest on that loan and payments can be made if that seller loan is not financing part of the required equity contribution. If the equity contribution, and let's just use 10% as an example, is $10,000, the borrower must come up with $5,000 of unborrowed funds, and the seller can take back $10,000 in the form of a standby loan, which means no payments of principal or interest during the life of the loan. However, that particular loan can accrue interest and principal over the life of the SBA loan with no payments being made. Other seller take-back loans are oftentimes asked for by the lender, especially in a case where a large amount of the loan is going to finance intangibles or blue sky. But the second seller note could be on terms where the seller collects principal and interest beginning on day one. If we go on, what do the SBA lenders like to see? Well, when you're looking at a lender, they're not interested in you wiping out your entire bank account to come up with the down payment. So they look at continued outside income from sources other than the business you're about to acquire or start, to look to mitigate how much equity they're going to require. So be aware that they want to see that you can support yourself after your equity injection. Now, what are the steps for applying for an SBA loan? These steps apply to most 7A loans, not strictly for the acquisition of a business, but the ability to finance an acquisition is primarily based on the historical performance of the business being purchased, not the borrower's personal strength, which is definitely more emphasized during a startup business as opposed to a business acquisition. Okay, so that's just an anecdote. SBA loan application borrower information form is called the 1919. That needs to be filled out. It includes, you also need to include the personal background of the owners and personal financial statements from anyone that owns 20% or more of the business. You would also need business financial statements, including profit and loss statement, balance sheet, projected financial statements in certain circumstances, and always a business debt schedule. Projected financial statements are required when you are doing a business acquisition, or if your business, your existing business that you're borrowing money for, does not demonstrate the ability to service all of its debt according to the business schedule and the proposed SBA loan, then you must provide month-to-month cash flow projections for the first 12 months after you get the loan and projected P&L for 2 years after that. You also have to disclose all the ownership and affiliations of the borrower, list of their name and address of the subsidiaries and affiliates, including anyone that has controlling interest or any affiliation based on stock ownership, if there's a franchise involved in the situation, any proposed merger that would create affiliation. And there's certain management agreements that businesses have that have to be reviewed to determine whether or not there is an affiliation between the business applying for the loan and the company that manages them. If we go on to the next one, we need to see that the business is, certified to be in business as a corporation, LLC, partnership, that it is incorporated, the state it's incorporated in. You need to see the license that they need to operate, the stamp corporate seal on certain applications if it's a corporation based on what state it's in, the history of the business, the loan application history. We mentioned before the income tax returns, the resumes of the owners of the business who own 20% or more, and more importantly, make sure that there is either a resume or a narrative explanation of anyone that will manage the business on a day-to-day basis. This is especially important in a business acquisition because the owners are leaving and the new owners have to replace the exact skill set of the people that are leaving in order for the bank to be comfortable that the business will operate at the same level of profitability and cash flow that it was operating on before. So that's why the deep dive into the management capabilities of the owners and the management team are very important in a business acquisition. There also has to be a brief history of the business, any challenges that it faces, including an explanation of why the SBA loan is needed and how the proceeds of the loan is going to help the business. And another thing that the SBA requires is that there be a lease for the business to operate in its space for the life of the SBA loan, or have options to renew up to the life of the SBA loan. Having to move your business midstream could be very disruptive. So the lease and the landlord's waiver are very important. Now, specific to a business acquisition, you must have the current balance sheet and profit and loss statement of the business being purchased, in addition to the previous 3 years of federal income tax returns, the bill of sale, which must include the asking price, the schedule of inventory, machinery and equipment, furniture and fixtures, and real estate, if that's included in the selling price. You also must have, and this is very important, a list of the expenses on that balance sheet and profit and loss statement that are tied directly to the exiting owner. Any expenses that are strictly tied to the exiting owner, being their salary, their benefits, the salary to their wife and kids, all of that has to be delineated so that the lender can add them back to improve the cash flow of the business for the new owners. What are some tips that we have on acquiring a business? Number one, we recommend that you use a preferred lender anytime you're doing a business acquisition that doesn't have full collateral, or any business that is not fully secured. We suggest that you use a preferred lender. Most non-preferred lenders or delegated lenders have to send their loans to the SBA before they can approve the loan and close the loan. This will add no less than 3 to 5 weeks to the process of getting an SBA loan. And remember, the SBA will struggle with the ability to finance any type of intangible asset, and the underwriting and processing under strict SBA guidelines is what is done in the processing centers. The credit criteria and the credit decision on a loan that's processed by a delegated lender, a delegated lender, a preferred lender, is based on the bank's credit appetite. And that's why we said that, they have more of an appetite to do a loan where there's less collateral because they're used to getting comfortable with cash flow lending. But if you work with a non-delegated lender, know that the SBA is going to try to mitigate their risk by probably lowering the amount of the loan, shortening the amortization or the LTV on the collateral. And that would be done obviously by lowering the amount of the loan. They also, generally speaking, promise the world, but they really can't promise because they're at the mercy of the SBA. So they'd like the SBA to move more quickly than they do. But unfortunately, the lender that you choose does not have any real power over how long it takes the SBA to accomplish what a delegated lender can do within their own framework. So again, the timing of how things go when you work with a preferred lender is generally you can get to the point of a conditional approval within 2 to 3 weeks time, depending on how much information you, the borrower, provides to the lender. You can get to a closing in 45 days or less if the borrower has all the documentation prepared and aligned with the SBA loan requirements, because SBA lenders must get a lot of documentation up front that certain conventional loans don't require until after the closing, because in order to get an SBA guarantee, the documentation has to be in place before the closing, or the guarantee is not valid until all the documentation is in place. So it's up to the borrower, and sometimes it can take as long as 60 to 75 days to get all the information that's required. At Multifunding, they have relationships with lots of preferred lenders, and do know of some that will always do deals with the minimum SBA down payment required.
I'd share with everybody one example of someone who we helped acquire an auto repair shop. We worked with this particular buyer for 2 years as they went through a couple different deals, and they found the right one. The company they found had $5 million in annual revenue, and we helped them secure a $4.4 million 7A loan to do it. In this case, they purchased the goodwill, equipment, assets of the business, and the buyer was allowed to fulfill his dream of ownership and allowed to do it. So sometimes people get a little fearful of the SBA and they listen to this and go, oh my God, that's a lot of work. And it is a lot of work, and you have to be organized, but it might be painful while you go through it. But when you get it done, you'll love the outcome.
Okay, we have some tips for you on partner buyouts. This mandatory business appraisal is required when there is one partner buying out the other. Why? Because it is not an arm's length transaction. So SBA requires a business valuation or appraisal to be done anytime you are dealing with a non-arm's length transaction, which is always in a partnership. And oh, by the way, when there's a business acquisition between close relatives, father selling the business to his son, there's a mandatory requirement for a business appraisal. And also, if the business selling price includes more than $250,000 of goodwill, blue sky, intangible assets are part of the value of the business. Anytime it's more than $250,000, SBA does require a business appraisal. A business appraisal is similar to a real estate appraisal in that there are certain appraisers that are licensed to do these appraisals, and SBA has a list that they've given to its lenders of what types of individuals are properly certificated to do SBA business valuations. The business valuation, like the real estate appraisal, will be ordered by the lender, not the seller, not the buyer, by the lender, and the cost of that is passed on to the buyer. Now, if you are working in a business acquisition or partner buyout with a preferred lender, the cost of that business appraisal is part of the closing cost, just like in a real estate scenario where the loan is conditioned upon the value of the real estate coming in at a certain amount. It's the same with a business valuation. However, if you do a business valuation, if you do a partner buyout or a business acquisition that needs a business appraisal with a non-delegated lender, that cost for the appraisal has to be done before you get the approval, because that business valuation is part of the package that SBA requires in order to make their determination. The bank's opinion is the partner's share is worth whatever their percentage ownership is against the value of the business. You are allowed to pay more than that, even when you do a business acquisition. But remember, SBA will absolutely not finance any more than the value of the business. And in a business acquisition, the SBA requires the 10% down, so they will only finance up to 90%. If you're doing a partner buyout, there are certain scenarios under which a partner is able to get 100% financing to buy their share of the business, depending on how long they've owned the percentage that they own and the actual debt to worth of the company before the acquisition, which has to be less than 9-to-1. The next slide says, make sure you have all your financials up to date and in order. And that means not only your business financials, your personal financial statement, your personal tax returns. And again, we already discussed why buying out goodwill when you don't have any real estate, why it's better to deal with a preferred lender. We've discussed that already. And then when you deal with a lender that understands the process and understands the type of deal you're working with, the process is much smoother for you. We've found, just anecdotally, that the disputes between the partners and the disagreement on what the value of the business is generally what holds up the loan.
To share with everybody an example of a partner buyout case. So a case we worked on early in 2020, where an entrepreneur had sold a big piece, about half his company, to a private equity firm early on. And now the private equity firm was ready to exit, and the partner wanted to get them out and retain full control of their company again. To do that required $7.2 million. We were able to get one bank to do a $5 million conventional SBA loan. Those terms were great because they were 10 years. And an additional and then a conventional $2.2 million loan. So that this case, using the SBA, this entrepreneur was able to regain control of his company, say a fond farewell to his private equity partners, and keep moving on. Just want to let people know that at the end of this, we'll have all the time you need for Q&A, and you'll have a chance to raise your hand or put it in the chat. So please hang with us, and we'll get to you to all your questions. Next piece I want to talk about is using an SBA for expansion or growth capital. If your business is hanging in there or done well, and there many are through COVID, this could be an incredible opportunity for you. Are there opportunities you want to take advantage of? Are there people you want to hire? Are there new products you want to develop or roll out or implement? Are there things you want to do? Getting an infusion from the SBA can be a great help to do this, to ease the cash flow tensions of doing that. And if you choose to get a growth capital infusion of under $350,000, the process is easier, and people like that because they will not require a lien on your house, and the first lien is not required on all your company assets. One example is a financial services company who wanted to add some new hires and just was getting a little nervous. They wanted some extra cash on their balance sheet. We managed to get them one of these 350 or under SBA loans. They added their hires, and they managed to substantially increase their business during COVID. Another example was a lighting installation company. This was pre-COVID, that was suddenly experiencing a huge inflow of work and needed cash. I'm sure at different stages along our journeys, we've all had cash flow issues. And rather than going to get an investor or getting into bed with a very high interest online lender, we were able to secure them with in just over 2 weeks, an SBA loan for $350,000 without any prepayment penalty and a 10-year term. Now Lynn's going to share with us about using the SBA to refinance your debt.
Okay, how do you qualify for debt refinancing through the SBA? The number one way is, well, the number one requirement is that the existing debt has to be on unreasonable terms according to the SBA. So what do they consider to be on unreasonable terms? Well, number one, if the note has a balloon payment or a demand feature within its note, SBA automatically considers that to be unreasonable. If the interest rates on your loan are higher than the maximum allowed by the SBA, that's also considered to be unreasonable. Right now, the SBA's maximum is 2 3/4 over prime for loans over 7 years, and that's 6%. So if your interest rate is a lot higher than 6%, the original term of your loan was more than 7 years, you're going to qualify. And remember, the demand feature or the balloon note makes it automatically acceptable. Credit card debt. SBA really believes credit card debt is unreasonable. If you've utilized a business credit card, meaning a credit card in the name of the business to finance your business, you can get that re-amortized in a fairly expedited manner. If you've used personal credit cards, however, to finance your business debt, it's possible that that can be refinanced, but you do have to have kept impeccable records because you're going to need original receipts and credit card statements for all the expenses attributed to the business that are on your personal credit card that you want to refinance. You also need, SBA also considers a loan that has collateral exceeding the loan amount to be over collateralized and therefore could be refinanced. And if a lender refuses to renew or extend terms on a loan with a demand feature or a balloon payment, that's also a reason to look somewhere else. Now, the lender's going to have to say that they refuse it, but that comes later. Anytime there is debt that you would like to refinance, it has to have been originally eligible for SBA financing. So here's my quick example. Say you bought a building for investment purposes, and then 5 years later, you decided to move your own business into that particular building. And your business is now going to occupy 51% of the square footage of the building that you bought as an investment before. Now, those proceeds would be eligible. So you could refinance that building under an SBA loan, even though originally you wouldn't have been able to. So, but like an example of one loan is if you used a loan to pay withholding taxes, you can't refinance that loan with an SBA loan because you can't use SBA to pay withholding taxes. That's not eligible. Never was, never will be. Did I finish that slide?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Then just remember that refinancing has to significantly benefit the business, and you'll need to do a written justification of that. And if you are refinancing a term loan, the new SBA loan payment attributed to that amount of the loan will have to be 10% less than the existing payment. And generally speaking, that's not a problem because SBA debt refinancing loans are usually for at least a minimum of 10 years. When should you refinance? Well, now's a great time. Interest rates are low, so chances are your debt is at a higher rate. If you have a good debt to income ratio, what does that mean? That means Could your business service your debt that you want to refinance over a 10-year period of time? So if you have a loan that's due in a year and has really high payments, and you can't afford it right now, but if you stretch that debt over 10 years, if your existing debt to income ratio shows that you could finance the debt over 10 years, now's a good time to stretch out those payments, create additional working capital. And so you would be able to reduce your monthly payments by refinancing your debt. And in tongue in cheek, you refinance when you don't need to. And that's just a typical statement that the best time to restructure your debt is when you're able to demonstrate that you can service that over a longer period of time, create working capital in your business now, as opposed to when your financials don't show that ability. And we've discussed this. The benefit is obvious. You're going to create working capital and improve your cash flow. This cash flow will help you handle the downturn in your marketplace that a lot of businesses are suffering from during this pandemic. I mean, we know some businesses are doing better, but a lot of businesses aren't. And your monthly payments will be lowered and your terms will be longer. And those are the main benefits of considering debt refinancing.
One example of a debt refinance that we worked on was for an HVAC company. And sadly, like millions of businesses, this business owner got stuck on the treadmill of high interest, quick turning online debt that he kept having to recycle to survive. And the terms got shorter and shorter, and it was getting tougher and tougher. We managed, after a lot of hard work, to help him refinance $1.82 million of that debt. And in doing so, he was able to improve his cash flow using the SBA by $360,000 a year, saving his business from bankruptcy and saving all those jobs. Now I want to talk a little bit about the SBA real estate loans. And yes, you can use an SBA 7A to get a real estate loan, but also specifically, we want to take a few minutes and talk about the 504 program, which is exclusively for real estate and equipment. These loans can be a little bit confusing to understand, so let me try break it down. Let us say you wanted to buy $1 million building that you're going to run your business out of. If you wanted to do the SBA 504, the only down payment need would be 10% or $100,000, which is a lot less than conventional financing. And then you would have two loans. 40% of it would be in a debenture with the local community development corporation that would be fixed rates for 20 or 25 years. And those rates right now are at historical lows, about 2.5%. And then the other 50% would be a conventional bank note with your conventional bank, usually running about 4% today. So it is an incredible time to think about purchasing real estate for your business, or consider, especially if you're on variable rates now, refinancing your real estate into the 504. Also, if you have equipment debt that, say, on a 5-year note, and the useful life of that equipment is longer, sometimes you can refinance it into an SBA note and significantly improve your cash flow. So this could be a great time to buy or refinance an owner-occupied building. Just to be clear, you cannot use an SBA note to go buy some investment real estate, a property that you purely plan on leasing. But if you run your business out of at least 51% of the property, you can't have tenants in the other 49%. I think we've covered most of all this. To give you a compare and contrast, if you want to get a conventional loan, you are going to likely have to bring 20 to 25% to the closing table, versus the SBA 504 that is 10% down. And the fixed conventional loans usually are fixed for 5, 7, or 10 years, and then they flip. And the SBA 504, because you have a chance to hedge the interest rate, because half the loan is fixed for 20 or 25 years. One case study of a 504 we did was for a camp and event space company, a summer camp in Northern California, and a wedding venue that had the opportunity to buy the lot of land next door. I think it was 100 acres. we were able to help them secure a 504 to do that, so they could substantially expanded their facility, and they were able to do this with a minimal cash down. Lynn, we'll just take a minute and talk about other SBA loan programs.
Okay, the SBA has what's called a cap line program. These are very specific revolving lines of credit that SBA has offered for certain needs. The first cap line is the asset-based cap line program, which is strictly for the financing of receivables and inventory and done on a revolving basis. Generally, the requirements will be the same as any other asset-based line. The loan is determined on 80% of eligible receivables that means 80% of receivables under 90 days and up to 50% of inventory. And the documentation includes monthly borrowing base certificate on these items. But this loan program goes up to $5 million and is generally put on the books for 10 years. And it's very effective if you need working capital financing. And it can be it's not cheap, but it's more expensive than the regular products. But this loan gives you a lot of flexibility. There's not a lot of banks that get involved in it because there's a lot of review on the part of the bank. They have to monitor. And so a lot of them aren't set up to do it. But if we can find a bank for you that does it, it's actually a great program. They also have a cap line, a line of credit program if your business is seasonal in nature. The typical one is the Christmas tree farmer that, needs the money for the planting, then sells it, then pays it down, as long as the line can be zeroed out for at least 30 days during the year to show the seasonality. There's also contract lines of credit where SBA can finance up to 100% of the labor and material costs to perform a contract if the contract's assignable. And then there's a builder's cap line that's very specific for building a project that already has an agreement of sale on it. So those are cap lines. And then they have express loans. Express loans offer the lending institution a 50% guarantee as opposed to 85 or 75 that they get on the regular 7A loan. Because of that, most banks utilize the express program for lines of credit. Presently, the maximum amount is it was $350,000. Now, during the stimulus, SBA has increased the express loans to $1 million through September 30th of 2021, at which time they'll revert back to $500,000. This is a very interesting product. These revolving lines do not necessarily require the same documentation as the asset-based cap lines we just spoke about. And then there's microloans, which are very, very similar to the SBA loans that we were talking about. It is a type of an SBA 7A loan program, but it is specifically for loans under $50,000, generally offered by CDFIs and community-based funding organizations.
So what are the changes to the SBA program? I'm not even going to try to say that. The new act, we're just going to call it the CAA, not to be confused with CYA.
And one thing, Ami, I wanted to add here, I heard yesterday that this is all being referred to as the Economic Aid Act.
Good, let's call it
that. So
that.
that's easier to say for you.
Okay, EAA. All right, let's go. Keep in mind that for these benefits, time is of the essence. If you want to take advantage of these savings, they will expire on September 30th or when the money runs out, and there's limited budget for that. So if anyone out there already has an SBA loan, you should have had 6 months of relief on your payments. You should have had 6 months of relief on your payments last year. Now you will get an additional 3 months, up to $9,000 a month. And if you're in certain hard hit industries, that could go up to 8 months. If you get a new SBA loan between now and September 30th, in addition to saving on the guarantee fees, which can be substantial, you will get 6 months of payment relief, capped at $9,000 a month. So there will be a significant reduction or elimination of your fees and your payments for the first 6 months. Beautiful benefit is that these are tax-free income. So not only do you get the savings, but you don't have to pay tax on them for now, or if you got it last year, that is retroactive. In addition, as part of the new act, as Lynn had mentioned, the lines of credit now go up to $1 million, or the express loans. As we mentioned, all fees are waived. This is the government guarantee fees. Be clear that if there are appraisals or documentation fees or packaging fees, you're going to still pay those, but the primary expense of the SBA loans, which is the government guarantee fees, are waived. And to keep in mind, if you own occupied real estate and you have rates that are coming up or to be reset, or you're paying variable rates, it could be an incredible time to refinance them into the SBA 504 program. What are the benefits of starting now? It's all about dollars and cents. Let's say you wanted to get an SBA to buy out a partner, working capital, expansion capital, etc. And if you got a $350,000 SBA loan and you were qualified for it and got approved, your total savings would be just over $31,000. The bottom of the list, if you got a $5 million loan, your total savings would be almost $200,000. And for the 504 program, which is a little bit different, let's say you had $1 million 504 loan project, your savings would be just shy of $39,000. Also real money. So if there's a time now, and this is what the government's intention is, to take advantage of SBA loans, they've also increased the guarantees to lenders, making it even more enticing for them to make SBA loans. I don't want to sell, but just to let you know that for over the last decade, multifunding has helped place over $200 million of SBA loans in hundreds of different transactions. We've built a network of lenders who are expert, who are really good at it, and we partner with them and we help find our clients the right lender, all at no additional cost to the client, to help them get the loan placed. Just want to share with you that we're super excited. Next Monday, we are launching a new platform called SBAignite.com. We think that this education about SBA loans is so important that the goal of this campaign is to help us educate, or we'll be all online, 1 million business owners and entrepreneurs about the SBA this year. We certainly hope that you will join us in this campaign and share the word with your friends, partners, communities, and colleagues. Just one other thing to think about. Sometimes people might say, I suspect some of you might say, geez, that SBA sounds pretty interesting, but I'm not really sure what I would do with more debt or how I would do it. I'm not sure what my plans are, or I'm not sure where I want to invest or what I want to do. Well, I always say never, never, never take debt without a plan. And we do conduct mastermind workshops with a group of like-minded entrepreneurs called the Velocity Matrix, where we help you together in a group assess your priorities and determine where you want to invest and how much, and where you want to go next and how quickly you want to go. It is a great scenario to take a step back and think through what it is you want to do and how you want to do it. And if that's of interest to you, we'll have some links for more information. The moderators, we're going to have time for plenty of Q&A. We're going to put into the chat groups a Google form. I encourage everyone to take the time to take a minute and just write down what the couple of things are that you've learned today, because there's no better way to learn it than if you write it down, or what your takeaways are. And at the same time, we're going to open up the chat, the Q&A, for questions. Feel free to write your questions in the Q&A, or if you'd like to raise your hand, we'd also invite you to speak live. And I think we can start with a couple of questions in the Q&A. One more reminder, there are opportunities to connect with us. We have a community at realtime.inc.com, a Facebook group. You can reach me on Twitter at Kassar, and our website is at multifunding.com. And now we'd love to hear your story and take your questions.
Thank you, Ami. The question in the Q&A, am I able to get debt and or SBA financing in the following scenario? international franchisor is opening a US-based corporation, Entity A, and I will be an investor providing capital under $350K through an LLC, Entity B, into Entity A. Can Entity B obtain the debt financing if investment Entity A is not structured as equally as but revenue share of Entity A?
Oh, we're gonna let the SBA queen take that question.
That is a very packed question. And this is called unpacking. I have to say that I have to break that down and think about it. So I would prefer if you could send your question in. Just on the surface, I must say, if the business is based in the United States, that's a plus. If you are talking about a franchisee of the franchisor that you're going to be part ownership, we have to check the affiliation. That's number 2. Number 3, if it's really an affiliate, we have to talk about the franchise directory and are you, on there and have the actual franchise met all of SBA's requirements. So there's a lot of different moving parts here, and I'm happy to delve into that with you. If you send that in to us, Ami, you could explain to him.
Yeah, I just think that there's one principle that's important, if I understood the question correctly, and we're not going to dig into it too deeply here. You can't get an SBA loan to make an investment in a company.
Oh, absolutely not. Yes.
Okay, which is, I think, what you're asking.
Oh, okay.
A company.
That I should have said. Yeah, an individual can never get an SBA loan. Correct, Ami. A business can get an SBA loan, and we know businesses are owned by individuals. So that's where I was going with this. If you own a second company and you were asking if company B could get an SBA loan, if the investment in the company comes from company A and you own that, then there's affiliation. And then that opens up a whole other can of worms besides the fact that an individual can't get an SBA loan.
Yeah, okay. Let's go on to the next question. Hannah?
Can I get multiple SBA loans for my different businesses? Are there restrictions with the number of loans, impact, and if we have received EIDL and PPP for one of these businesses?
Okay.
EIDL
and PPP don't count into the 7A loans. Although I know PPP don't, I am not 100% sure about EIDL, but remember, SBA, I don't know if we said this clear enough, but for eligibility, your size is combined, you and your affiliated businesses. When we're talking about SBA 7A lending, the maximum amount of guaranteed funds from the SBA cannot exceed 3.75 million. So if all of your deals added together are generally, in the regular time, if it's less than 5 million, you're okay. When SBA is offering a 90% guarantee, your total maximum of guaranteed funding may be a little less than that. But in general, the answer to your question is, depending on the combined amount of all those affiliations, yes, you're not limited to one per affiliated group.
Just to answer that question in another way, everyone's entitled to up to $5 million of SBA loans. So, but even if you own say you own 20% of one company and that company has a $5 million SBA loan, and then you own 100% of another company, you cannot go get any more SBA debt for that second company. It's not proportionate to the percentage of company that you own.
That's correct.
Does EIDL money count as debt? And if so, would the SBA refinance that money, or can I keep for working capital use?
EIDL counts as debt. You cannot refinance, and you cannot, nor would it make sense to refinance an EIDL with a conventional SBA 7A loan. You can only use an EIDL for authorized purposes to specifically help you with expenses related to the recovery. And if you didn't have those, technically you need to reimburse, you need to pay that loan off and close it out.
Do the new EAA benefits also apply to the SBA cap lines?
As far as fee waivers, absolutely. Although you do need to know that it's the guarantee fee that is waived on the cap line and not the ongoing servicing fees that they charge. Remember, I told you that there's quite a bit of monitoring on the part of the bank on these cap lines for which they're allowed to charge up to 2% servicing. Those fees are not waived. Only the fees that are payable to the SBA, and that's the upfront guarantee fee. But you would get a 90% guarantee for all that matters, yes. And the payments, the 11-12 payments that Ami talked about, if you get a new SBA cap line between February 1 and September 30th, yes, you will get 6 months of paid principal and interest.
I was struggling to think what EAA meant, but then I remembered.
It's for you, Ami. It's
Thanks.
the left tongue tie.
Can you refinance an existing SBA real estate with cash out?
You
could,
can,
oh, sorry, go ahead. You can do that conventionally if you can get it, but not with an SBA loan.
no, an SBA loan, you can apply for an SBA loan for working capital for your business. The real estate that has equity can be used as collateral. However, the use of proceeds would be, first of all, if you wanted to refinance it, you'd have to be able to improve your cash flow by at least 10%. And then if you wanted to increase it to, get more cash for working capital, you can do that. But the purpose of the loan would be twofold. You would have a debt refi and a working capital loan. So you would not get the full 25 years. You would get a blended maturity depending on how much was allocated to what. You could also just get a working capital loan and offer the equity in the real estate in a second position to the SBA lender, and that would also be eligible. I hope that answers your question.
How is the amount of the 7A loan determined if you are using it for working capital, for instance, and how is the term length determined?
The term length is traditionally 10 years. The amount is determined based on the lender's comfort with your ability to cash flow the loan and make the payments.
When you do an SBA loan where, I'm sorry, Hannah, when you do an SBA loan where more than 50% of the loan is utilized strictly for working capital, you are going to have a cash flow projection that demonstrates what you're going to use the money for.
How long does it typically take to get an SBA 7A loan approved if you're not using it to buy a business?
That's a big fat question of depends. Like in the economics classes at school, they always used to say it depends. A lot of that depends on how organized you are, how well you have your information together, and the size of your ask. If it's $350,000 or less, it's easier and it's faster. If it's more than $350,000, it's more complicated. And it also depends upon making sure that you go to a good lender. I always joke about it, but if you needed eye surgery, you wouldn't want to go to a heart surgeon to open your eye, and vice versa. If you're going to go to an SBA loan, you want to go to a bank or a lender who's good and knows what you're doing.
I have a question that doesn't qualify in the shuttered venue grant. I know that we are not really diving into that. I have a new venue that was open in October of 19, and I had a full calendar for 2020, which never happened. I don't have much history of sales and bookings as we were new, only had been contracted, but we lost those contracts in 2020. Can I still apply for the SBA loan to keep us open since we are still not allowed to hold gatherings? We don't qualify for the shuttered venue grant.
Well,
go ahead, Lynn. Sorry.
You have to demonstrate you've never had a PPP loan before. I mean, you can apply for a PPP loan as long as you meet the requirements, 2.5 times your average monthly payroll in, 2019 for as long as you are open in 2019. Or you can actually, if you weren't open the entire time, you can use the average of how long you were opened, but you're still going to have the same number of employees. And if you weren't open and you're still not open, your ability to prove that, well, if you're going to pay your employees, that's what you could use the money for. I'm not sure what the advantage of a PPP loan would be for you at this point.
The follow-up to her said, I didn't have payroll for the venue, so I can't do the PPP.
You're in a tough spot. You might want to look at local or state grants as well.
Yeah. Why don't you qualify for shuttered venue? I mean, if you're a shuttered venue, or is it a wedding reception hall or something like that?
Maybe.
Why don't we do
Only
this?
for live entertainment.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
I don't think I don't. If you want to reach out to us, we'll be happy to try and answer your questions one-on-one. So,
Do LOIs help qualify for a 7A?
an LOI for buying a business.
Does not specify.
If you have an LOI, you can begin the process. Absolutely. You won't be able to close until you have a signed sales agreement, but the letter of intent is enough to get the process started.
Absolutely.
If that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
To make sure that I understand this right, you stated that it is up to your lender to state or determine that you qualify for an SBA 7A loan based on the fact that they cannot offer you financing any other way. Is that correct?
Yes.
I have one more. Will you readdress the myth of the SBA guarantees encouraging riskier loans? And how can the SBA loans help if there is existing senior debt?
Well, if you have existing senior debt, there's one of two things you can do. If you're qualified for it and your request is for $350,000 or less, you can get a subordinate SBA debt loan for $350,000 that could help you either refinance some of it or recapitalize it, or it might make complete sense to refinance everything, to take out all your existing debt and put it into a 10-year SBA loan or longer if there's real estate involved, and that might give you an opportunity to substantially lower your monthly payments. Also, two things quickly for everyone. Please, maybe the moderators can put the link to our Google form one more time into the chat if people didn't have the chance to fill it out. And also, sometimes it's difficult to get the nuances of your questions through, you typing it in the Q&A and then us trying to answer you. So if anyone wants to have a conversation with us, feel free to raise your hand. We're down to a smaller group of loyalists here who are sticking with us right through this. And we'd be happy to take a little bit more time and chat with you. So.
I have another question. If an SBA 7A is taken to buy out a business partner, can equity from the balance sheet be used to supplement paying higher than what the SBA would have valued the business at?
The point that we were trying to make is when you are buying out a partner, SBA will absolutely require an outside business valuation. Whatever the value that the outside business valuator comes up with is what the SBA will consider to be the amount of the business. And they will lend you, depending if you meet all the circumstances, they will lend you up to that percent of the person that you're buying out. So if you own 20 and you're buying out the 80% partner, they'll lend you up to that 80% based on the business valuation. They're not saying that you as an individual can't figure out how to pay more to your partner if you want. It's just you can't use SBA financing to do so.
And if you're adding debt, if you're going to say the value, the SBA thinks the value of what you're buying is $1 million and you're going to pay them $1.2 million, and you're going to try and find a mezzanine lender or somebody to take out the other $200,000 for the transaction, the SBA is going to make sure that you've got enough cash flow to make those payments. If you're doing it with your equity, that's not a problem. Should not be a problem.
That's right. They absolutely will look at your ability to pay that, even though they won't lend it to you. And of course, if you do that, SBA will be in a first lien position, by the way, on
Yeah,
everything.
everything correct.
A client has asked me to assist with his business plan to support an SBA 7A loan. What are your fees for providing lender guidance?
Feel free to reach out to us and we can talk about that. It's not really our business. We might be able to answer your questions quickly or offer some consulting if it'll be more specific.
We are all caught up.
Ladies and gentlemen, here's your chance. We've got the SBA queen with us, Lynn Ozer. If you have any other questions, feel free to chime in right now. Otherwise, I'm going to wrap it up. If you enjoyed this training, please catch the word SBA Ignite, which this will be based on, is launching on Monday, and it is our goal. We think the SBA is the best known secret and best kept secret in government. We want everyone to know about it. So we're setting on a mission to educate 1 million business owners about SBA. So please join us, and we'll be sending out emails and newsletters about it, but please join us in spreading the word about SBA Ignite.
One follow-up, SBA is always in first position, correct?
If it's more than $350,000, yes.
Wait a minute. SBA does not have to be in a first position. That's a misnomer. Most banks, and remember, it's a guaranteed program. Most banks don't want to go behind another lender, but SBA doesn't require a first lien, except for they must have a first lien on any asset that they finance. But other than that, if you're doing working capital, SBA would take a second lien position behind another lender. But if you're working with a lender, they don't want to be behind somebody else. Am I answering the question right, Ami?
I think so, yeah.
Can LOIs assist in the application for SBA loan is the clarification. Are they important to have?
Whoever's asking that question, do you want to raise your hand in the chat so we can actually?
What's an LOI?
Yeah,
I thought it was a letter of intent.
Yeah, so we can chat with you. So if that person's comfortable with raising that hand, to raise your hand, we can let you speak and we can understand your question because it's not clear. Or you can be shy and email us, whatever you prefer. Burnett Coastland raised the hand. Now we can figure out how to let you speak. Hold on, Burnett. Hold on. We're so excited. Someone has raised their hand. And why can't I? There we go. Hi, Bennett. How are you?
Very good, Amit. I've been following you for a while, and this is the first time to connect, so this is cool.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah. So we've got a client that's launching. It has an amazing pitch deck on a pretty groundbreaking. I can't really tell you too much about it, but it's that.
You tell us you have to kill us. Is that it?
It's that high proprietary shit. So, but they've collected this. The founder of it has collected multiple LOIs to get investments. So my CEO and 30-year of granting and banking experience guys that are bringing me along, and with my green behind the ears kind of way, but I've brought to them certain clients and stuff. But the thing is what I'm learning about is they've set me a foot, so to speak, to absorb this learning. So it's great timing that you guys have this going on. So yeah, that was just a kind of a random question, but the thing is when you have if you have an LOI, does that give any to the value of the business? Because as far as I heard, these 7As can help with a startup business, right?
So they can. It's much harder, but keep in mind that yeah, the business looks healthier if there's some money on the balance sheet besides the debt from investors. But a lot of it depends upon A, what the need for the debt is, and B, if any of those investors are going to own 20% or more of the company, they're going to have to personally guarantee the debt. And if the founders or the owners are going to own, say, 75% of the company, and the investors are going to own, multiple investors are going to own 25%, the founders still have to be comfortable with the fact that they are personally guaranteeing it. And sometimes that gets tough for them. So
Yeah.
you have to really think about, at least in the context of SBA debt, and a startup and investors, you really have to think through the personal guarantee issues.
Okay.
Are you
Okay.
talking about the startup nature and the ability to repay the loan? Is that what, or are you talking about strictly what Ami was saying about the liabilities of all the owners? Remember that in order for the SBA to get involved, you have to be beyond the research and development stage. This business has to be able to be producing funds within the next 12 to 18 months.
Right. No, that's definitely the case on the latter. What you were saying is, like I said, this is a groundbreaking platform.
It'd be much more enticing to a lender for a startup if there's some contracts that show that there's going to be someone's agreed to buy something. That makes and there's proof of some pending revenue. That would make the startup application much more compelling.
Yeah. Well, I wish I could tell you more and you'd understand if I could tell you.
Even up in the sky in my my fighter jets here, still can't tell me.
It's not your typical widget. Let's just put it that way.
I get it. Best of luck to you. Best of luck.
Oh, thanks, guys.
Ami, we have one more question in the Q&A.
Sure.
For a consulting business that ramped up in 2019 to break even in February 2020 and then lost a major client in April of 2020 to run at a loss for the rest of the year, do they qualify for an express or a micro loan? Expect to pass break even in second quarter of 2021.
The answer is a big fat maybe. Or it might be if that consulting business has accounts receivable, they're going to need, if you need some working capital to push through to the break-even point, you're going to have to do some kind of factoring or something until you can get to the break-even. It would be a case-by-case basis.
All right, thank you.
Anything else, folks? Maybe the moderators, if you don't mind, can just put the Google form in the chat one more time. So if anyone hasn't filled out and wants to be in our newsletters or anything like that, or get any follow-up information, you can feel free to do that. So I think we have one more in the Q&A, Hannah.
It's just a comment. I'll be circling back.
Okay. All right, folks, we went well beyond our hour, which is cool with us. Encourage you to think about this time as a time of opportunity and ignite your entrepreneurial flames and think about what you want to take advantage of and what you want to do and how you want to grow and expand your businesses. And if the SBA can be a tool to help you fulfill your dreams and use debt in a responsible way, more power for you. Also, if you really want to think the stuff through and what your next steps are and what your priorities should be and what your investing should be, certainly encourage you to sign up for one of our Velocity Matrix courses that we talked about, because sometimes people hear about all this and they say, geez, that sounds really good, but I have no idea what I want to do or what I want to invest in or what my priorities are. And that set of tools can help you sort that out. So, and with that being well, unless Hannah, you have anything else, we're going to wish everyone Godspeed.
Yep. Thank you, Ami.
Thank you, everyone. And thank you, SBA Queen.
My pleasure.
Take care, guys. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.